morning. It isn't exactly sunny and 75 today like it was yesterday. However, we do need to keep our eyes on the prize, which is planting season. That is right around the corner. It's almost the second week of March, and we probably ought to have both planters ready to hit the fields if the weather cooperates. That means it is about due time to pull the high-speed corn planter out of dormancy in our shed, get it hooked up, primed, and ready to run, because we could be planting at any point in the next month. Of course, you never really know what Mother Nature has in store, but neither do the people who make a living trying to predict what Mother Nature is going to do. That being said, I don't exactly want to get caught with our pants down if on the off chance that we are able to plant in late March, which is unlikely, however possible, I'd like to be ready to roll. The field cultivators we can have ready to go in 30 minutes. The planters, a little bit more intensive of a process. I'm sure anyone who lives on this beautiful rock we call home, aka Earth, can appreciate the fact that no single year is really the same from a weather and microclimate standpoint. One year we'll be lucky to get our crops in by the end of May. There's other years where we're pretty much wrapping it up at the end of April because we had such a good stretch. There is one year in particular that comes to mind, especially when we're thinking about getting our planters out, and that is 2012, where we were planting 100% capacity at the end of March. Everything was rolling. We had what my dad would tell you is probably one of the best starts to corn planting that we have ever seen in his lifetime. It was everything you could ever ask for: warm temperatures, appropriate rainfall, incredible early season performance, emergence, and a great stand. And those of you who are familiar with farming, especially the year of 2012 in the Midwest, it ended up being one of the worst droughts we had seen in decades. So our fantastic crop turned into a complete crop failure by the end of July. But that's a tale for a different day. Some of you have been around the block a few more times than I have. If you look at the average age of a farmer, I'm actually much lower on the spectrum in age than a majority of you. With that being said, I am curious, drop me a comment below. What is the earliest you have ever planted corn or soybeans? It would probably help to mention where you're from, because planting in February in southern Texas probably isn't the same as planting in February in northern Minnesota. So drop that. Like I said, for us, in my memory, is the late March planting date. I'm sure some of you probably rolled earlier. Some of you may be lucky to get in by the beginning of May. Drop me a comment. I'll try to get back to all of you. Obviously, you're all well aware at this point that the soybean planter is already hooked up. That's part of the brand new equipment process. We took our tractor in. They made sure everything was functioning properly and got our new planter ready to roll for the year. So that's half of our work in terms of planter preparation done. What we do need to get out, like I said, is Dad's corn planter, the 1775 NT 24-row high-speed ExactEmerge corn planter. I don't believe my dad's planter tractor, the 8310R, has the 2630 display in it, which is required to fold and operate that planter once it's hooked up through the ISO. So I'm gonna grab that from his office. It's one of these 32630s. We have less and less every year as we trade off for newer Gen 4 displays. Based on our extensive nomenclature system we have on the back of these with Sharpie, I'd say it's probably the middle one with row sense activations, SF2, and section control. Fortunately, Chris and I had the foresight yesterday afternoon when we were done waxing to not pull everything back into the shed, because we'd just be dragging it out again this morning. There shouldn't be anything in our way to get to that planter. Whew, that's a nice rig. I don't know about you all, I think we did a pretty good job waxing these tractors. They're gonna look good out in the field this spring. This 8310R is pushing 10 plus years old. I believe it was made in 2012. In the last 5 or 6 years, roughly, John Deere's moved away from these external type GPS systems and computerized devices, and they've started integrating all of their newer GPS processing units into the equipment themselves, like that 8R370 over there. The auto steer and all of the brains, so to speak, of the machine are actually fixed on the tractor armrest, and you cannot remove them. I don't know if there's a technological reason for that, or if John Deere's just wisened up to the fact that it makes them more money to not let farmers switch them from different machines, because historically we could take this monitor out. Oh my gosh, this is not going good. You almost need to be a rocket seismologist to get these things lined up correctly to fit these mounts on. As I was saying, historically you were able to move things around, like a monitor that we're using in our planter tractor. Well, we could just pull that out and move it to our combine and retain all of our GPS stuff that we needed in terms of auto steer activations. Now everything's separate. So our newer combine, the 780, you're paying for a subscription for steering on there. The 8R370, you're paying for a subscription. I guess maybe John Deere just realized that financially didn't make sense to let farmers get a free ride on multiple pieces of equipment. And you know Mother Deere, she's all about maximizing profit. Not to say that her product isn't quality, because I do think Deere has the best steering systems in the industry. It isn't cheap though. There's the plug in that. On that 8R370, the equivalent of this, but newer, is located right here. On this 8310R, all this is a performance panel, diagnostic panel, looking at things on the tractor. It does not handle any kind of steering or mapping or anything of the sort. I've been trying to get my dad to move this 2630 up to a newer Gen 4 monitor. I haven't been able to convince him. He's not exactly as tech savvy as I am, which is probably expected from the older generations. I'm sure you guys may know a farmer like that, or two. But he just wants to stay with what he knows, even if the newer displays are more capable. And of course, there's nothing better than something that you've already paid for, as opposed to having to pay to upgrade. One thing I think that has really irritated farmers in terms of Deere's choice in their cost structure, when these 2630s were common, you bought the program. So you say you wanted SF1 basic auto steer, you bought the program for 1,500 bucks, I don't know if that's right, and it's on this monitor forever. It is with the monitor, it has its own serial number, that program. Almost like Microsoft Office used to be once upon a time. Now, on the newer Gen 4 monitors, you never technically fully own the software. You have to pay yearly subscriptions. You may pay less up front, let's say $750, I don't know if that's right. Well, you take that for 3 years, well, you've already passed your $1,500. So, another genius move by Deere. Okay, looks like we have everything properly set up. We do not have GPS because I don't have the dome on the cab. It's not necessary to run the planter. Once we plug the planter into the back on the ISO connection, it'll register everything in here, pull up all the programs, and then we'll be able to unfold. Walk 100 feet to the machine shed to open the doors, or drive 100 feet. I'm a millennial, that's an easy choice. It would be really nice to get an overhead door here on the main entrance to our big cold storage shed. Of course, we would need power as well. I guess you could say that we have this barn spec'd like an Amish person. No windows, no power, but also very cheap. With everything out of the barn, we've got plenty of space to get the corn planter pulled out of here. Vertical till and the 2019 field cultivator out of the way that way, and the brand new field cultivator's more to the west, so should be plenty of room to hook this up and pull it out into the light. Before I get a million comments about how dirty this planter is, I want to tell you all that my dad is very adamant about not thoroughly power washing the units on this completely electrically driven planter. He has a concern that the pressurized water could get into things and cause issues that wouldn't exist if we just kind of rinsed it off. So this is not going to be spotless by any means, much like the rest of our equipment, but to a worse degree. We just don't think that the risk to reward is there to shine this thing up, when all you're doing is opening yourself up to the possibility of electrical issues and computer failures. I do believe that every single row has 1 or 2 computers on it. Maybe, or maybe not, I could be wrong. I've already hit on it somewhat, but I'll expand a little more. This is a 2017 John Deere 1775 NT ExactEmerge planter, 24 rows on 30-inch spacing, making it 60 foot wide. It is a high-speed planter. It's phenomenal. If you guys are on the edge of buying a John Deere ExactEmerge planter for planting corn, I'm just gonna tell you, go for it, you won't regret it. These planters quite literally perform better than even John Deere claims. You can push them 12 to 13 mile an hour if you have the horses in front of it. The only major downside to these planters, other than maybe some reliability questions if you're afraid of electronics, is their price tag, especially on the newer models. This one being a 2017 was very reasonable when we bought it. I think it was in the mid 200,000 range, maybe 250 to 275, which was a lot in 2017 for a planter. Now we could probably almost get close to what it's worth, but the new ones are probably pushing 400K at least. So they've added a lot of price to the same models. Expensive. They do a good job though. Just gonna be Chris and I again today. My dad and Uncle Jeff are both on vacation down in Florida, so we're holding down the fort. I'm gonna go ahead and back this up here. Before we actually hook up the planter, we have to do some preventative maintenance. So we'll get that done. Being that all of the planting action on this planter is done by electric motors, it requires more electricity than the tractor's alternator can supply. So you have to attach a generator to the PTO to supplement the alternator on the tractor. We've learned the hard way that if you do not service said generator appropriately by applying some lithium grease to the splines inside, it will fail on you. Took a couple years for that one to catch up with us. We do know now though that you have to apply grease to it, so that's the first step every year. We're gonna split this in half and put some grease on it. Gonna need this. Gonna need some of these. And most importantly, in the same spot we left it last year, we'll need some of this special purpose molybdenum grease. The splines on this generator are the only thing that we need this grease for, so we'll just leave it on the wall over there because we'll need it the next year. Makes perfect sense. At the rate we're going, we should run out in about 15 years, if it doesn't go bad before then. Throw that down there. These PTO generators are many things. One of them isn't being light. Let's say those are about an 18. Wow, it's almost like we've done this before, Chris. Now last year when we did this, I think Chris broke a piece. So Chris, don't break a piece this time. We'll flip it. It almost looks to me like that's already coming out. For the record, we did not do that. Unless we did it when we took it off.
Wear and tear, it doesn't, yeah, it needs to be checked.
Yeah, we replaced that last year.
Yeah.
Because we broke it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that came apart.
Mm-hmm. Looks like it's got pretty good grease, doesn't it?
Yeah, but we're gonna grease it anyway.
I know, but I agree there.
Those are the splines in question. We didn't know to grease it for the first couple years, and they ended up just going out completely. I think it kind of grenaded in there. Didn't end up being that expensive of a replacement. It did shut us down for an afternoon though, because we had to go to a different dealership to get the part we needed. All we're gonna do is just put a few dabs of that molybdenum grease in there and then put it back together, and then Chris and I are probably gonna have to run into our John Deere dealership to get a new sensor that looks like maybe my dad broke. Before we go get a new sensor, we're just gonna go ahead and put a little bit of this grease on. As they say, a little bit of grease a day keeps the John Deere mechanic away. Last year I used my fingers and it took a couple days to get all this grease off, so I've wisened up. I'm using one of my screwdrivers. I'm sure that this gets fairly warm when it's spinning, so this grease will liquefy a tad bit and get distributed across everything. Piece this back together really quick. Lined up right. Almost an extension. An impact gun's stronger than I am. Doesn't take too much. You know what? I think we can probably try and run it.
Oh, is it on the inside or outside?
It's on the inside. Oh man!
Yeah, take the whole thing in.
Gosh, that's snug. We'll break out the big guns. Let's do this. Oh, you turn it the wrong way. That's your issue.
Yeah.
Oh, heck, you go the right way, it comes right off, Chris. Told you not to do that. The concern with this part right here is it's kind of ajar in the middle, like maybe when someone took this off, they kind of roughly sat it down. This is a temperature sensor for the gearbox or some kind of liquid in here. I don't exactly know what. Because this faces the front of the tractor, the PTO slides in here, and we actually bolt this in with a brace. We're just gonna run this into the dealership and see what they think. We may change this just for preventative maintenance, because once this generator's on, you don't really want to take it off till the planter comes off. Chris and I made it 30 minutes into the morning and we're already headed for parts. It's better than we normally start. Seems like we're always waiting on trains. Oh, there goes some Tracos. I'd take a couple of those. I walked in and asked the shop foreman if he thought we should change that sensor, and he replied, absolutely. You're going to be kicking yourself for not changing that when it breaks mid-season. And you can tell compared to the brand new one on the left, the older right one is in a little bit worse shape. I was looking and looking for my glove in the truck, and then I remembered I left it here to do an important job, keep that coolant reservoir closed off from the world. Don't know how much this sensor was. I'm sure being a genuine Deere part, it wasn't cheap. Big enough. A little bit of spray lube. You can get it to come out. One wants to work upside down, okay. We've done all the easy stuff. Now for the heavy lifting, no pun intended. Oh. I think there's plenty of lube in there. Okay, we got the cumbersome part done. Now Chris and I are going to back up to the planter, hook up to the 2-point. Sometimes you back up and you pick it up in the first try. Other times you don't even have it connected on the 20th try. Now for the fun part, connecting all of the hydraulic lines and electronics to the back of the tractor. Sun's come out a little bit outside, the ambient temperature is starting to pick up, so I'm not gonna need this vest much longer, especially because I got a sweatshirt on underneath it. I am gonna need something from the old tool chest. Chain and cable lube, nope. Electrical contact cleaner, just what the doctor ordered. Over the course of owning this highly electrical planter, we've come to the realization that it's just easier if you clean all the electrical contacts while you're hooking them up. Seems to prevent some issues that would normally occur if you didn't do that. It's easier to clean them before you get started as opposed to when you're out in the field trying to beat a rain and a unit's not working or your main connection's not showing up. So we'll use the contact cleaner. I believe there's only 2 on the generator. 7 pin probably does not need cleaned out. Might as well do it while we're here though. The ISO, the main computer connection, and this, probably not an issue. There's only a few hydraulic lines on this machine. Not that many to wrangle. That was sarcasm, by the way. Got our handy dandy reference chart up here on the phone. And now we just find them and plug them in. All right, 1 out of 10 done. It's probably best to work in a certain order. There's just so many of these cables and they're not really that pliable. It's easier to just kind of plug in the one you have and then you got less to look through. lines in there. The 2 slots are all the markers, I believe. One's your main up and down, and also does a lot of the folding. 3 and 4 are both vacuum lines. There's actually only 1 vacuum line. Everything else is returned through the case drain. Got 4 lines left. Nope, one of these is tied together. Make that 3 lines left. That is frame return, which I think goes there. We don't have them right. It'll tell us pretty quickly when we plug it in and these lines just start shooting hydraulic oil out everywhere. Last but not least. Alrighty, fast forward about 20 minutes and we've got everything hooked up, including the electricals. Sometimes it's easier just to have 2 hands and not be trying to wrangle a camera the entire time. Everything looks like it's tied up in a good spot and is past the tug test, but I'm going to fire this up and Chris is going to stand here and watch this, because if one of these return lines pops out and it's sending hydraulic oil back through the system, the amount of oil it can send in just a little amount of time is impressive. And the mess that comes along with it is just as impressive. So we're going to see if everything's hooked up. If so, we're going to drag the planter out. I put the rear wheels down, lifted the planter all the way up. Doesn't seem to be any issues so far. We're gonna go ahead and pull this out of the barn real quick. It does look like I have plenty of clearance here on the east side. I'm gonna have to watch the west side with a little bit more of a keen eye because we are closer to that ripper. And pull it straight out and hopefully make it around the vertical toe. You don't realize how dirty your windows are until you're out in the sunlight. This is the corn planter's first time out of the shed in probably 9 months, maybe. It's been a while. Let's see if this thing remembers how to unfold. And by this thing, I mean me. That ought to put the wing wheels down. Wing fold, and that ought to stretch out the old wings. Probably ought to put it neutral. It's almost time to plant corn. That'll do. That's pretty much all there is to it. After that, you just throw it in plant mode, and you're ready to go. Test the markers real quick. This one should be the left marker. Yep, that works. Hopefully that scared Chris a little bit. Now I'm set to the right marker. For some reason they both went a little bit. Pull that back down. And yes, I know we have all this GPS hardware that is very capable of doing every single iota of planting on our farm. We still like to use markers, my dad especially. I'm probably not going to use them as much on the DB60. It's pretty standard practice in our area to have markers on your planter, even if you don't need them. I'm sure at the bare minimum it is going to help your resale. I know a lot of you are not running markers, and good for you, I guess, but we're going to keep running them. It's not like they're that expensive. I'm going to fire this thing up and run the vacs and even the seed fan. I'm gonna pop this window open. Actually, I may not if there's a hydraulic leak, but that's what I'm concerned about. Oh, that would make sense because it doesn't have the delivery brushes. I'm gonna run this thing real quick, or release the vacs in the delivery fan, and we're gonna have Chris stand back there and make sure nothing goes haywire. Both vacs should be on. Put this on, should turn the delivery fan on. Looks like we've only got one vac running, so I may have a wire cross somewhere. We'll crawl back there and see what's going on. Oh, well that's conveniently timed. Vacuum 1 automation problem. Those are our vacuum hoses. I unplugged the vacuum hydraulic levers, plugged them back in. Everything else seems to be tight. The only other issue, other than a hardware failure on the vacuums, which is unlikely, is that I messed up one of these lines down here. I believe the vacuum return drain line are these two that are hooked together, and I think they're in the right spot. So we'll fire it up, try it again. Would you just appreciate how clean these 3 tractors are? I mean, it doesn't take much to make a John Deere tractor look good, but you throw a little wax on there, and they look spectacular. Come on. Well, none of those rows have seed harnesses in them. Okay, take 2. Okay, that's not looking good. Still getting vacuum 1 automation problem. Chris confirms that it's not on. I think we'll just defer on this problem. Worry about it later. We'll go ahead and finish the installation of the row unit equipment.
This one on, that one was off, and when that one went on, this one went off.
One turned off and the other turned on?
Yeah, because when you first started, this one turned on for a little bit, and then the other side was off.
Maybe I got a line misplaced. I wish I had a quick answer for that problem. I'm sure some of you planter experts might know what's going on. At the moment, I really don't know. I'm just gonna move on to the next part of the planter setup process, and that is installing the high-speed delivery brushes and the row unit corn plates. The brushes are half of what make the planter high speed. They're electrically driven brushes that move the seed from the plate down to the ground in a quick and concise fashion. The electrically driven row units with the plates we're gonna put in are the other half. They bring the correct singulation, the correct population as you go through the field, match the speed, do everything accordingly to get you the right numbers. The belts help make sure that those numbers fall in line where they're supposed to in the ground, because in a non-high-speed planter, a lack of brushes can cause a lot of fumbling and tumbling as the seed falls down the tube. Hopefully Chris yells when I get too close. Pretty simple stuff. These are the belts. We pull them out every winter, mostly because we're concerned that the mice might use this little material to make nests. We try to pull anything out we can that can prevent that from happening. And I do not believe these are really cheap to repair. The other thing we have to do is, as we install them, we have to re-tension the belt itself with this little spring here. Don't know if I can do it with one hand. And of course, you're going to see a reappearance of our good friend the electrical contact cleaner on each one of these assemblies or electrical connections to make sure they function properly. Like I said, nothing too complicated, just a necessary evil when running these ExactEmerge planters. Oh, there we go. Just got that one with one hand. So here we have row number 4. We've got belt from row number 4. We try to keep them together. I don't know if it really matters because the sensor does not care which one goes to which row. You can interchange them. We've just tried to keep them together for the sake of simplicity. I've already tensioned this one. I've already sprayed it. So what you do is you undo this, you pull off the actual motor assembly. This is where the seed plate goes. Move that to the side. Then what you have here is this little channel where your seed tube would normally be, except for you don't have a seed tube because you have a high-speed delivery brush. Spray that down, drop this into the groove, like so. I found that once you get it about halfway, it's easier if you just go ahead and attach that little sensor connection. Then you just make sure you find it, the groove, slide it in. You always want to pull against it to make sure it's not loose on the bottom. Once that's all secured, like so, you just put your motor back down. It sits right on top, and the motor assembly, the seed unit assembly, holds that brush into place more securely. You clamp this, and then you're done with that part. So Chris and I are going to go around all 24 rows. He's probably going to take the belts. I'm going to put them in. Chris and I just finished installing all 24 belts on the back of the planter here. For some reason, I'm very proficient at this task. I don't know why. For those of you who run these ExactEmerge planters, I will give you a quick tip. Anytime you need to do something with that belt, like uninstall it or put one in, run your seed depth all the way to the top. Gives you much more room to work with and makes the project go easier. I don't know, Chris, how long did that take us? 30 minutes?
I would say.
Probably 25 or 30 minutes. Now we're going to finish it off by doing the plates. This right here is the seed plate that the motor spins to singulate the seed in accordance with the target population and the ground speed. On our other planters and more traditional planters, they're flat plates. These ones are round. It's part of the design to make the high-speed brushes work. Pretty simple. All you do is pop one of these hoses off, undo this, slide them into place, assuming everything on the inside is set right, twist it on. Because we only plant corn with this, we don't have to mess with any of the micro adjustments. Close her back up, put the hose on, and there you go. You got a plate in, ready to plant corn. For those of you who don't know, the corn and the soybean plates are different. This is a 32 hole corn plate. I believe the soybean plate is a 64 hole. So we've got little filled in ones every row. That little hole is what helps pull the vacuum. The seed comes up against that. On the soybean one, it just wouldn't have the ones with the covers on it. Every single hole would be open. One of the wear parts on the inside of this is this rumble strip right here. I'm not an expert on the design of these row units. If anyone could chime in, they're starting to get kind of worn. Does that mean we should replace them? Or are they fine to run? Are they that important? I don't believe they're terribly expensive. Comment down below what you think. There you have it. Only took about 10 minutes to put the seed plates in. It's not quite as intensive as putting the belts in. 24 belts, 24 plates for a 24 row planter. Other than fixing those wear parts if we decide they need changed and diagnosing what's wrong with this vacuum here, this thing's pretty much ready to plant. For those of you who are new here, I'll give you a rundown or a refresher course on how these planters work. When you're ready to plant, you load your seed into one of the two bulk seed tanks. One tank feeds one half the planter, the other tank feeds the other half of the planter. Pretty simple. Once the planter is in plant mode and you put it down, the hydraulics bypass through, run that seed blower delivery fan right there sitting on the back. Seed runs out the front, and there's lines distributing it to each row on the planter. Just a fun little tidbit of information. Once the seed gets to a certain level in this little mini box on each row, it blocks the airflow, reducing the pressure in the line and basically preventing it from sending more seed. So that's how it regulates what's in the line and prevents it from overfilling. All of that seed finds itself behind this plate right here. With the combination of these little holes through here, this vacuum line that is powered by one vacuum on each side, the seed is pulled up against the plate. The planter itself is constantly reading ground speed and your target population, so it adjusts that motor instantaneously to stay on the appropriate population. It spins around and reaches its final destination in the unit, which is the seed brush on top. Once it gets to a certain point in this path around, so lose a little bit of that negative pressure from the vacuum, drops off on that seed belt, which grabs it and takes it the rest of the way down to the ground and puts it exactly where it needs to be. There is a sensor in the seed delivery belt that is constantly reading the seed flowing through each individual row, reporting that to the monitor and the computers in the tractor for the operator to read out, and of course for the system to know or alarm you if something's wrong. That basically just ensures that you and the planter know that it is getting out the appropriate amount of seed or population based on what you're requesting it to. These ExactEmerge planters are some of the best in the business at maintaining an accurate population and doing so at absolutely blazing speeds. We're talking 10-mile-an-hour rating from Deere. If you have the horsepower in front of the tractor and you have the right seed in the tank, you can easily push this thing 12 or 13 miles an hour. We've got an 8310R on the front, which isn't exactly enough horsepower in some fields. Probably going to need 340 to 350 horsepower minimum to run 13 miles an hour with our setup. If you had any kind of starter fertilizer system or row cleaners in front, that would only increase your power consumption, and you might need something closer to that 8R370, pushing 370 horsepower. The 310 does the job for us. You just can't really floor it if you want to. For all intents and purposes, the electric motor in combination with the electric delivery brush are what make this high speed. However, you can give an honorable mention or even say it's a necessity to have active hydraulic downforce to ensure that regardless of how fast you're going, the row units are maintaining quality contact against the ground. Without that, you could get a lot of bouncing. Even airbag systems probably cannot keep up with a 10+ mile an hour rating through the field. You could even give an honorable mention to the hydraulic wing downforce that shifts some of the weight off of the center frame to the wings. Probably not as necessary as the individual row downforce, but it can't exactly hurt almost like a cherry on top of the cake. The only true difference between the 1775 NT ExactEmerge corn planter and our DB60 over here, other than the different frame design to handle more weight and more rows, is that this has the delivery brushes. This brand new DB60 is equipped with the MaxEmerge 5E package. It is an electrically driven row unit. However, it does not have the delivery brushes, which is pivotal to ensure that at high speeds, your seed is reaching the trench in the appropriate spacing. Without it, it's kind of just shooting them down there. It's bouncing around, no guarantees that your spacing's even gonna be that great. I've already explained this a few times, but I know some of you are still kind of curious, why didn't we get the ExactEmerge on this planter? To put it in as simple of terms as possible, it was purely a cost to benefit decision. This planter is solely going to be planting soybeans. And it's not that we don't care about soybeans, it's really that soybeans don't care about soybeans. Small changes in plant spacing and population really cause no detriment or benefit to your soybean crop and final yields. As long as you're above minimum population thresholds, 10 or 20,000 plants per acre swings in your soybean spacing probably not really going to cause much impact at all, other than maybe too much or too seed in one spot or not having enough seed in your barn. On the other hand, a few thousand corn plants too many or too few in a spot could literally be the end of the world for your cornfield. It is much more sensitive to population than your soybeans are. Soybeans can adapt to what's around them. You could say that soybeans aren't quite as cannibalistic against each other. If you get too many corn plants stuffed in one row, they'll start to compete with each other, take up too much sunlight and nutrients, and you are going to end up with a net negative. To put it in layman's terms, corn plants are like fairy tale princesses. If they don't get their glass slippers by midnight, they very easily could turn into a frog. On the other hand, soybeans are kind of like a stray cat. As long as they can find food and water, they'll probably end up reproducing. Well, other than the ones that get run over by cars. I hate to be so blunt, but that's just kind of the way it is. I've seen soybeans grow up out of cracks in the ground and look beautiful. Corn, if it's a little too hot, a little too cold, maybe rains a little too much or not enough, it kind of shrivels up and underperforms. In defense of corn plants, they are much better in the later season. It's all about how they start, not really how they finish. They can handle a diverse selection of adverse weather other than strong winds in the late summer. Soybeans, they need some timely rains in August. As long as you get your corn off to a great start, it should finish strong. Soybeans, they can start about as rough as you could imagine. As long as they get some good rains in August, you should have good yields. Those of you who are tired of listening to me ramble on at this point should be grateful, because we are reaching the end of the day. I got enough done today to feel proud about my work, but at the same time, it was not enough to brag about. Not that I ever brag about how much I get done. I won't pretend to be as productive as other people pretend to be all the time. The sun did find its way out of the clouds this afternoon and ended up being a fairly decent day, minus a little bit of a breeze. Always thankful to have good conditions to work outside. Obviously, we are still in the infancy of getting our spring preparations done. I mentioned earlier in the video, the field cultivators really are not that hard to hook up. These newer ones don't have as many grease zerks on them. There's not as many things to look over. You basically plug them in, make sure all the tires are aired up, every system's good to go, and you're ready to go field cultivate. It does help that we are big believers in putting our tillage implements away, ready to go. I'd love to tell you all that it's just because we're super energetic and on top of every single thing on our to-do list. More realistically, it's because it's a lot nicer to work on these field cultivators in the summer when it's warm outside and the sun's shining than in March when you never know if it's going to be 70 degrees or 20 degrees. So we get it done in the summer. Easy choice. Well, and of course, this one is brand new, so there's really not a whole lot we need to do. Someone did comment and mention that we need to check the wheel bearings because said commenter mentioned that they got a brand new field cultivator or tillage implement and they had, quote unquote, just enough grease in the wheel bearings to get them home. So we'll have to look at that when we get it out. Unlike yesterday, I have ample time to pull everything back in. I'm doing a little bit of creative brainstorming. I'll probably pull the 4-wheel drives in there and see if I can get both planters side by side in this area. I'm no expert, but I would speculate that this pickup truck would be in the way in the center of the shed. I would also speculate that that planter unfolded in the middle of the driveway is also in the way. So we got a few things to do real quick. Sorry about your yard, Jeff. Just happens. I gave myself just enough room to work with there. Shouldn't be an issue. Bring it in. Okay, got it? Yeah, I definitely got it. Putting the four-wheel drive tractors in first, so I'm just gonna get this out of the way. That ought to do. Getting the power washer fixed is definitely high up on the agenda, so we can finish cleaning this off and get some wax on it. Since it cooled off though, I'm not really too upset that the power washer is broken. That's gonna be an issue right there. I thought I'd be able to make use of that last 20 foot, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't exactly have much to spare over here, so I'll probably just shut it off here to make do with the space we have. You gotta know when to hold 'em. Know when to fold 'em. I brought the small one first, particularly because I thought it would fit in there. We are going to be kind of tight once we get both planters in here. Gosh, it almost feels criminal to pull these tractors that are waxed back into that dusty shed. They're going to have a film of powdered limestone on them the minute I pull into that shed. Parking is obviously an issue. The one thing we do have going for us is that the third four-wheel drive is in at our local John Deere dealership getting serviced. So we have a tad bit extra space. Once spring really kicks off, all of the tillage implements will be outside, which opens up a lot of room. We always like to store the planters inside because they have the most technology on them. The tillage implements, well, they're a little more forgiving, or at least we care a little less about them. Look at that shine. I'm gonna try and go butt to butt with these two four-wheel drive tractors. It should save us a bit of room. The light's on so I can see more specifically so I don't run over Chris. That'll do. Of course, you turn the battery off, not on. I think Chris was in charge of locking this one last night, so that's on him, not me. As a millennial, it is my job to pass the blame onto the older generation. Get this tractor nice and cozy here in the corner. Is the door gonna shut behind it, Chris?
Got plenty of room.
Oh yeah, we do. That worked out well. This is working out better than I was anticipating. Just got to get that 8310R and the corn planter in here somewhere. May have to cock it at the end, but that's not too hard to do. Okay, time for the last one. It was almost a fairy tale ending, but it was too close there on the corner. I wasn't going to make that turn, partially because I parked my truck in a spot that prevented me from getting wide enough to make said turn. Go figure. Chris kindly pointed out to me that I probably should have put the other planter in second. I wasn't entirely sure it was going to fit the way it was organized currently, so I did that one first. Yes, I would have had much more room to swing wide if this was not in the way, which is part of the problem. That's okay, we'll back this thing out. Get the back end of the planter over a little bit, swing it even wider. Just gotta make sure I don't clip our conveyor because that would be unfortunate. Doesn't look like it's gonna be an issue. Oh yeah, we're golden. We definitely have enough room to clear this now. I hope. Just goes to show, ladies and gentlemen, when there's a will, there's a way. Turn the front for good measure, throw her in park, call it quits. Are we in all the way?
Barely.
Okay, perfect. I could have probably pulled one of these planters into that gap where the other planter was parked all off season. I do have plans to do a little bit of bells and whistles installation on the DB60, some backup cameras and other accessories, as well as accenting the cab with another monitor to make my life easier as the planter. So I thought I'd keep it more accessible. We can move everything out. It's not like it's the first time or the last time we'll ever do so. That's the first time these two have ever been parked side by side. This will be a pretty common sight this year. That is, unless we don't get any rain delays. If not, they'll be parked outside. Alrighty folks, I think this is going to be the end of the episode for the day. With the action starting to pick up a little bit, I'm also hoping to increase my upload frequency. Some videos may be longer, some may be shorter. I know that my videos aren't for everyone, but I do greatly appreciate every single one of you who shows up and watches them. Your viewership does mean the world to me. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Until then, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!